Should I really start that new business idea? Is it finally time to give up on this relationship? We're all faced with these difficult decisions at some point in our life, and if we're being honest, we've all made bad decisions in the past. But that is all about to change. In this video, I'll expand on the key concepts from this book, Decisive, How to Make Better Decisions. In summary, the book highlights how there are 4 key principles that you need to consider when it comes to making an important decision. Principle 1 is to widen your options. Let's imagine someone that you work with has sent you an email. Now you open this email and you think it's kind of rude. Should you reply back or just ignore the email? Now what I've just done is what the book describes as narrow framing. Just going into a pros and cons list for each of the 2 options is not the right course of action. This is because you've only explored 2 options. So whenever you're presented with an either this or that situation, alarm bells should be ringing off in your head. This is an indicator that you're in a narrow frame. But by widening your options, you have more to choose from and thus more likelihood of choosing the right decision. Now you might be thinking in some situations there are just 2 options to choose from. Actually, you can get your brain to think more creatively. One practical way is to use what the book describes as the vanishing options test. This is what we would do if our initial list of options just vanished. So if we go back to the earlier example to apply this technique, if you can't reply to the email and you can't just ignore the email, what else can you do? One option could be to escalate this to your manager for them to deal with. Well, another option could be to meet the sender of the email face to face. This way, you're able to clear up any miscommunication and address any underlying tension. Now, applying this technique, you could probably think of even more options on how you could handle the situation. But if that doesn't work for you in the situation, you could always consider the opportunity cost. All this means is that if you decide to do something, what are the alternatives that you miss out on doing? Say for example you have $20 in your pocket and you're looking to buy yourself a fast food meal. Instead, you buy a nice bouquet of flowers for your partner. You could even use the $20 in your pocket to give to the homeless person across the street from you. These are the opportunity costs. The final technique that you could use when it comes to widening your options is to replace the word or with the word and. But here is the important thing with widening your options. You don't actually want too long of a list of options. This will lead to a term called analysis paralysis. This is where lots of information can actually overload you and cause you to freeze. Instead, when it comes to making a big decision, you want to have between 3 to 5 serious options that you can explore further. Before we even make a decision, we often look for information that supports our own belief system. This can often happen without us realizing. This is confirmation bias, an enemy of good decision making. For example, whenever your favorite sports team play, have you noticed how often the referee makes a bad call against your team? We tend to think of most referees as bad at their job, but in the same game, so does the opposing set of fans. The referee just could be really bad. But do we often remember how many times a referee made the right decision for our team? Nope. That's an example of confirmation bias. If you've put 500 hours behind a proposal at work, you're going to be a lot more inclined to support that project for going ahead, even if there are big flaws underpinning it. To tackle confirmation bias, this is where the second principle applies. Reality test your assumptions. It's important to know that you shouldn't just trust your instincts no matter how good you feel about something. Daniel Kahneman, a Nobel Prize-winning psychologist, highlights that the biggest danger to decision making is overconfidence. Many entrepreneurs start a new business focusing on all the reasons why it will work, but studies show that after 5 years, only 1 in 3 businesses actually survive. So instead of just trusting our instincts, we should actually look to test first. So instead of quitting your full-time job to start a new business, why not work on both at the same time? For example, instead of starting an online store to sell 100 different products, just start with a handful. If it's successful, you can slowly start to increase the product scope. If it's not, that's fine. You've hedged your bets and you've avoided any regrets of not trying your business idea out. It's like coming across a beautiful, glistening lake during your summer holidays. You'd probably want to dip one toe in first before you just leap headfirst in and die of hypothermia. Now we're getting closer to making the right decision, but we still need to protect ourselves from our emotions. But the worst thing is, emotion often dominates our decision making. The more emotional the situation is, the less sensible we become. I know I'm guilty of saying things I shouldn't have said during a heated argument. And when it comes to making decisions, we're all unsettled by the possibility of losing. In fact, we make the worst case scenario way bigger in our heads. When people were to gamble money on a toss of a coin, studies have shown that if they could lose $100, they wanted more than $200 in return. This shows that humans see the pain from losing as twice as powerful as the gain from winning. So principle 3 is all about attaining emotional distance. And one technique to better handle your emotions is to apply the 10-10-10 rule. When considering a choice, how would you feel 10 minutes from now? How would you feel about it 10 months from now? And how would you feel about it 10 years from now? Analysing this technique helps us to gain perspective. Another technique is to use Andy Grove's way of thinking. Andy Grove was the former co-founder and CEO of Intel, leading them to become one of the biggest companies of the 20th century. When faced with difficult decisions, he would often ask himself, what would my successors do? You can also apply this same principle outside of business or work. Say it's a difficult decision related to your personal life. Now instead, imagine it's your friend in this position and not you. How would you advise your friend in this situation? All of these techniques will look to help you distance yourself from the situation. It's important to note that everyone is wrong sometimes, especially experts. The fourth principle is preparing to be wrong. We often fall in love with our ideas. We treat them as an extension of our identity. If we see someone challenging our idea, we take it as a personal attack on our intelligence. Instead of obsessing over your idea, obsess over getting the right idea. One practical way to do this is by using the devil's advocate approach. Find all the reasons why your idea won't work. Another technique is to imagine that you've made the decision, and 1 year later you're looking back and you see that the decision has failed. Why would it have failed? Thinking like this is not being negative. This approach allows you to find any key flaws in your idea, which is a good thing. This is because you can see if you can fix these issues before you actually execute your idea. But sometimes, even after careful consideration, issues can come up. This is why it's important to think about the worst case scenario. Can you tolerate the decision that you've made, even if it ends in complete failure? If you can't, then you probably shouldn't go ahead with the decision. It makes sense to do a quick recap. When it comes to making an important decision, the book highlights that there are 4 key principles to follow. Principle 1 is to widen your options. You want to have between 3 to 5 viable options to choose from. The second principle is to reality test your assumptions. Look to test your idea on a smaller scale and assess whether your beliefs are actually right. The third principle is to attain emotional distance. Imagine someone else is in your position and you have to advise them on what to do. The fourth principle is preparing to be wrong. What if things don't go to plan? How would you respond? After applying these 4 principles, you'll be much better when it comes to making an important decision.
Oh, I see. Then everything is wrapped up in a neat little package.
If you're still here, you're an absolute legend. I'm Vas, and thank you for watching.